Good morning and good afternoon, depending on where you are. I'd like to welcome our guests in Moscow and here in Milan. And thank you for participating in the tasting of Asti Spumante. And this is our landscape is the first winemaking landscape protected by UNESCO.
Bella affollata, Covid no, proprio. Ok. Sì, scusate, era per permettere al rappresentante ICE di fare un saluto iniziale ai presenti. Oggi avremo qui una degustazione che raggruppa 6 aziende, una degustazione diciamo trasversale perché ha sia l'Asti Spumante ma anche il Moscato d'Asti.
Our DOCG appellation that is known as Asti DOCG includes two types of wine styles depending on the pressure of the wine itself. So we have Asti Spumante is a spumante, whereas Asti Moscato d'Asti is a sparkling wine only. There will be 6 wineries here to offer their wines. Actually, there are 5. One cannot attend, even though we have the wine. Here we have Tessa de Valieu from Vincchio and Vaglio. The other wineries, Matteo Soria, Perlino, Giulio Cocchi, will have some representatives that are connected through Zoom with us. And then we will also taste wine from Fratelli Bartini with Wine Canti, who are not present, but they also sent their Asti Spumante even though they cannot attend.
Ancora non abbiamo segnali di avvio, c'è sempre diciamo, una fase di saluto politico. Aspettiamo un attimo. Posso parlare? Avvio? Per i presenti solamente posso parlare, ok. No, dicevamo per appunto questa è la quarta masterclass che organizziamo nell'ambito di questa Milano One Week, ne seguiranno altre 2, una domani e una domenica, dove ovviamente se siete interessati avremo anche altre aziende in degustazione, quindi ci sarà modo di ampliare ulteriormente l'esperienza legata all'Asti Spumante e al Moscato d'Asti. Io comunque posso iniziare magari diciamo, con gli argomenti che di solito trattiamo in queste masterclass, poi magari le ripeteremo per i nostri amici su Mosca, se è il caso. E quindi innanzitutto
Then, first of all, when we start these tastings, we would like to remind that our area, the area of Langhe, Roero and Monferrato, or is in the specific area, Asti, Canelli, and the historical wineries of the winemaking area were awarded, or actually were acknowledged as UNESCO winemaking district. And this acknowledgement has been given to these areas not only only for the beautiful landscape, the hills, and the valleys of Piedmont, but because of the intervention of man that managed to make this wine-making district a great place and maintaining it also for the next generations. So it's not only an acknowledgement to the landscape, but an acknowledgement to the people who protect this landscape. And the UNESCO Heritage was given in 2014. And this is a very important acknowledgement for all of us. Of course, our production area is very well known, especially to Italian consumers. The area is in Piedmont, in the province of Cuneo, Asti, and Alessandria. And all in all, the production area includes 10,000 hectares of Moscato grapes, which is exclusively used to make Asti Spumante and Moscato d'Asti. A couple of words about the Consortium. It was founded in 1932, before the DOC appellation was finally recognized, because the wineries, the producers, mainly the Spumante houses who use Moscato grapes to make their Spumante, their Asti Spumante, even though already in 1865 this wine started to be made in the area of Asti, or better Canelli. And actually it is particularly relevant for the history of Italian Spumante, because Asti was the first Spumante, Italian Spumante. It was created when Carlo Gancia, who is from this very important family, started. So he was coming back from France, where he went, and he worked a lot in Champagne, by the way. So he decided to experiment the metodo classico, the Champenoise method, with the Moscato grapes that are typical of the area of Canelli, where he started his company. And of course, this gave good results immediately, so much so that some neighboring wineries also started making Asti Spumante with Moscato grapes and Metodo Classico, Champenoise method. In 1998, Martinotti made it possible to make Spumante with a simpler method, thus enabling more wineries to make Moscato Spumante. He created the autoclave fermentation method. So unlike the classical method with the free fermentation in bottle, so bottle fermentation, that can cause some problems, because often in those days fermentations were not well controlled, and so bottles would explode. On the contrary, this new method, the Martinotti method, made it possible for Asti Spumante and another Italian Spumante to use these, to have a production process which is much more consistent and easy to manage. Then in the history of Asti Spumante, there are two turning points in our history. 1961, first Spumante made with Metodo Classico, and 98, Martinotti made developed this process that he registered actually that was registered some years later by Charmat. So he patented the method that Martinotti invented but never patented. So we are now talking about Metodo Martinotti or Charmat, depending on the points of view. Currently, production of Asti Docg is 100 million bottles. And in this slide, we have some data, but these date back to 2019. And actually in 2020, the production went up. And in 2021, we expect to close with 100 million bottles. And 55% of Asti Spumante and 45% Asti Spumante. And the product is exported in 170 nations across the world, and distribution is separated, differentiated between the two products. Moscato d'Asti as the main markets in the States, mainly where 80% of production is exported every year, whereas the market for the Asti Spumante is Russia, followed by Germany, Great Britain, Italy, and the United States. There are 3,300 winemakers, and of these wineries, half are members of the consortium. The area of production is very broad, 9,200 hectares in 51 municipalities in the province of Asti, Cuneo, and Alessandra. And of course, this is a broad production area. And of course, there are different types of soils and different geopathological characteristics that, of course, influence the type of wine. So we go from southern areas closer to Liguria, where the soils are more sandy and loose. And then if we go up north in the area of Cuneo, then closer to the mountains, to the Alps, there is more rocky soils, and therefore soils that are not very sandy and not very clayey, like we have in the area of Alessandra, which is south. And therefore this has an influence on the ripening of the grapes, and therefore gives to the process of sugar concentration, different aromatic profiles and different timings. Moscato, as I said, is the only variety that can be used to make these two wines, and of course it is present. It has been present in the Mediterranean area from the Romans, and in 1500s Moscato started to be made, and the first turning point when Moscato started to be known was in 1865. Of course, this is an aromatic variety, and of course the sensory profile of the Moscato grapes is very evident. We have white flowers, acacia, orange blossoms, and then of course notes of citrus fruits, but also fruits with a white pulp or yellow pulp, and then depending on the area of production, there can also be exotic fruits notes, tropical fruits, passion fruits, ananas, lychee, and other fruits. Can we perhaps start with the first wine so that you can serve it for the participants here? As to the type of products in the Asti appellation, of course, the heart of our production is Asti Spumante in sweet. Of course, sorry, this is the dry slide, but the dolce, the sweet spumante, is the most popular across the world, with a residual sugar which is pretty high. In this case, when we talk about Asti Dolce, sweet Asti, we have 100 grams of sugar per liter. And since not all the sugars were fermented in the wine, we have an alcohol content that is 6-7 degrees, so pretty low alcohol. From 2017, we also introduced an extra dry version, and in 2020 we also introduced in our rule book other styles with lower residual sugar down to the so-called pas dosé Asti. We start our tasting with an Asti Brut residual sugar of 12 grams per liter. And there should be Lucia Soave from Matteo Soria Winery, who should be connected with us. Yes, I can hear you. Hello, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Lucia Soave, and I represent the Matteo Soria Winery. We are in Castiglione Tinella, 10 minutes from Canelli, 10 minutes drive from Canelli, and 20-minute drive from Asti, in the area that you have just described beautifully. We are among the hills of the UNESCO hills, and at Castiglione Tinella, at the area of San Martino, our family, the Soria family, has 40 hectares of vineyards of white Moscato grapes. The Matteo Soria winery is a winery that is specialized in the production and growing and the vinification of Moscato d'Asti. We don't have other labels. All our winery is fully dedicated to the production of this wine and with this grape, Moscato. So we make the traditional Moscato d'Asti and the Asti Spumante Brut. So this spumante is not sweet, but it's dry. This product is a product in which Matteo believed very firmly since the very beginning, and he started in 2017, and then in December this year, we started making Brut. This is an Asti, 100% Moscato. Therefore, on the nose, you'll perceive the typical notes of Moscato and all the aromas and the flavors that you have just described. And also on the palate, it's very surprising because so you may expect generally so you may expect to have a sweet flavor, but actually the mouth is dry, and the bubbles are very fine and elegant. In terms of labels, this bottle is called the Brick de Marella. Brick for us is the tip of the hill in Piedmontese dialect, and this is where we, as a Soria family, we grow our grapes to make this wine. Then the brick, the tip of the hill, has an ideal exposure for these grapes, and in particular, it is ideal also because of the climate, the microclimate that we have, because we have high temperature differences between nighttime and daytime, and this makes it possible for grapes to develop significant acidity, which is very important for a spumante wine, and that is very important because this is an aromatic spumante, because for Moscato it's very important to have a very good balance, and this is also a strength for the classical Moscato d'Asti DOCG. In terms of pairings, we can say that this Asti Brut, so it's a new generation wine, so it's a new generation of the appellation Asti DOCG, pairs beautifully, so it's perfect for convivial occasions and informal occasions, for instance, for the aperitifs, and it has such a structure, since it is 12 degrees in terms of alcohol, so it can be paired very well also with more complex dishes. And therefore, for instance, the first courses with pasta or rice, or also second courses with fish and white meat, because we have to remember we have these fine bubbles and this acidity that clean the mouth and are perfect for these dishes. So the Asti prepares the palate to enjoy these dishes. and it's also not bad with desserts. You have to like the pairing of dry wine with sweets, with desserts. And I would like to conclude by saying that Asti is designed, for instance, Matteo always says that across the world they say that Asti wine is always fine, because Asti, thanks to the base of Moscato, has a versatility and flexibility in terms of pairings and use on different occasions, which is quite significant and unique. Thank you, Lucia. Thank you for the description of this first bottle. This is an Asti Brut, I remind you, Asti Brut. Of course, there is not the residual sugar which are typical in the sweet Asti Spumante, but the aromatic profile is very pleasant. And then we have the floral notes, the fruity notes that are always prevalent. And then we have this nice surprise of this nice finish, which is drier and very enjoyable. That is so with the typical descriptors of sage, white flowers, citrus fruits, certainly very pleasant. Thank you, and let's move to wine number 2 from the flight, Wineries Perlino, and we should have Giuseppe Bellotti connected with us. Can you see me? Yes, we can see you very well and hear you very well too. Welcome. Thank you and good morning, everybody. Today we present Asti Scanavino Sweet. And Asti Scanavino, so the Scanavino brand is an historical brand. The winery was founded about 100 years ago, and initially there were other wineries in the area, in between Langhe and Roero, a few minutes from Alba. And then 20 years ago, the Scanavino brand was bought by Carlino, and it has become one of the main brands of our company. Today, the Scanavino brand in some markets represents is very important for our spumante. For instance, in Russia, in Australia, in China, the Scanavino brand sells very well.
Nonostante Carlino ad Asti sono specializzati nella produzione di spumanti.
So despite we're specialized in the production of spumante and vermouth, we also make Asti Spumante DOCG and other still wines that respect the personality and the tradition of this area. We make 11 million bottles of spumante. We are in the area of Asti. And of these 11 million, 80 million of these volume is exported. And Asti represents a significant part of this volume. And there's more, a very important aspect, since we are at the very heart of the Asti district. That is to say, the people who work here at Carlino, they almost all come from the area, they are local, and they all have a relative who is a winemaker in this beautiful land. And therefore, the growth of Asti in our portfolio has always been extremely important. So you can enjoy our Asti Scanavino Sweet, 7% alcohol, 90 grams per liter of residual sugar. In Russia and in China, we are very successful, and we sell this wine, and it is very well appreciated. also with some spicy dishes from China, and also some typical dishes in Moscow. And so I think it still has a great potential for growth, and that there can be various occasions for use. Okay, thank you, Giuseppe. Certainly, the pairings is something that we will discuss maybe also with the next wineries, but certainly Moscato doesn't need special occasions to be appreciated. It is good for any moment of conviviality and of pleasure with people, so it is good to taste an Asti. Thank you for your presence. And now I would like to move to wine number 3, which is still Spumante Dolce, and the winery is Cocchi. And we have connected Francesco Brigo, who is the expert manager of Cocchi. That is an historical winery that has always played a key role in Asti, and there is also an interesting project in Asti about bars and restaurants. Because Cocchi had also bars and restaurants across the world. But this is just a detail. You have the floor, Francesco. Here I am. Thank you. Good morning, good afternoon. I hope you can hear me well. Today we are here to talk about our Asti. That is a product that is also for us a very important product and part of our tradition, which is extremely important for all the wineries who are represented here. And in particular, we as Cocchi, we are very, very much present in Asti, so we cherish very much our city, Asti, not only the area, because our company was founded in 1891. Downtown Asti with a bar that is still there, that is the one that you mentioned, and over time, between the end of the 19th century, beginning of the 20th century, we opened also other bars in Italy, in South America, and in Italian colonies abroad. And also, what is very important is that the original production plant of Cocchi is now downtown Asti, so in the middle of the city. So then we moved the plant in Coconato, so outside the city, but originally the production plant was in the heart of the city. And this link with this bond with the city of Asti is also in this label, and the color you see, Asti Cocchi, is related, so it's the same color as the flags of Palio di Asti. That is a very important event, that is a horse race, and that takes place every year in fall, like in Siena, the Palio di Siena. This is Palio di Asti, and it's a similar race. In our case, we only have the sweet Asti, and so we find it great for us. Cocchi is a boutique. We are a small-scale producer. We make Spumante, we make also Vermouth, but our production is a small-scale production. We are quite successful in various markets, for instance, in Asia. And in particular, recently, we also were given a golden medal from the Drinks Business magazine, very popular in the UK and in the States. And in particular, when it comes to pairings, I like to reshuffle cards and change a bit the habits of people. And I always suggest it, since it's very boutique, a very boutique wine, I also recommend a pairing with a blue cheese that has a very strong personality that, according to me, pairs beautifully with our Spumante. And since at Cocchi we also make Vermouth, I also like to use Asti also as an ingredient in some cocktails, like you do with champagne. Of course, this is sweet and aromatic, but it can be used in some cocktails very successfully with cognac or with brandy too. And other spirits, and also with citrus fruits like orange. This is just to give you a different suggestion, so to do something different with Asti. Very well, thank you for what you said about cocktails and mixology. This is a topic that is very important for our consortium. So we are working on this mainly for younger people. So certainly this is quite remarkable and important to us, because this shows that this historical product is also very modern. Yes, absolutely, I agree. Thank you, Francesco, for your presence, and thank you for what you said about Asti. Thank you to the Cocchi family. And let's move to wine number 4. That is the winery that unfortunately we don't have anybody here from the company, unfortunately, but I can talk about it. Fratelli Martini, it's called the Fratelli Martini, and this is a winery that makes a high volume, a high number of bottles, and Canti, this wine, is part of a line of products, and in this case it's a Moscato d'Asti Dolce Vintage. And vintage, so millesimato vintage, is not is only for Moscato d'Asti, but not for Asti Spumante, because since this comes from a tradition of champagne, like champagne, there is no requirement to put the age or the year of vintage in the label, because we use blends, for instance, with wines from the previous year. And so sometimes this is a guarantee or to have a constant quality over time. And in this case, like with other wines, this wine has this nice aromatic profile that is typical of the Moscato grapes. So white flowers, fruit and flowers. And as far as I'm concerned, personally, that's just my comment, I think this one has more citrusy notes compared to the previous Moscatos. So there is more this lemon, this citrusy note. Maybe you don't agree, but the beauty about wine is that each of us can have different opinions about it. Very well, let's move to wine number 5. And in this case, let's go back to the Matteo Soria winery, but with a type of wine, now Moscato d'Asti, that we had not yet tasted today. So this is a Moscato d'Asti, not Spumante. And technically speaking, Moscato d'Asti is a wine where the sugar profile is even higher. So there's more sugar compared to Spumante, but the alcohol content is lower than Asti Spumante, because the sugars haven't been turned completely into alcohol. And therefore, Moscato d'Asti is about 4 to 6.5 degrees of alcohol. And certainly, with Lucia from Matteo Soria, she can tell us more about this wine. You have the floor, Lucia. Yes, you are right. Before we had 12 degrees alcohol and 11 grams per liter of sugar. Now it's 5 degrees per liter and 140 grams of sugar per liter. And so there's a big difference. What can I say about Matteo's Moscato? Well, certainly this is our flagship product of our Matteo Soria winery. And so thanks to the terroir and to all the geographical characteristics, the climate, and also the presence of our values and our approach to winemaking, we have the ideal conditions to have the characteristics that are the most traditional and highly appreciated of Moscato d'Asti. Matteo manages to keep a perfect balance between sugar and acidity in this Moscato, and actually it is not at all too sweet, and actually it makes you want to have more. So it's not cloying, it's not sickening, so to speak, and that may seem to be too sweet. On the nose, it is a very perfumed wine, like all Moscatos, and has all the flavors, the typical flavors of white peach, acacia flowers, and some say it's more sage, others say it's more musk notes. In any case, all these aromas are all summarized in the label. Our label was designed by a local artist and represents a flower to remind of the floral notes, with a berry in the middle, so a berry from a bunch of Moscato, then a branch with acacia flowers, and then we have a bee. That is what happens very often during the harvest, because Moscato is a super sweet grape. And so when we harvest the grapes, and also in springtime when we have the flowers on the plants, there are many, many bees that come close to our bunches and our flowers. And so that's what we wanted to communicate with our label. What is very important is this bee, because this bee is like the connection between the past, the memories, and the present. Because actually in Castiglione here, we have adopted the so-called sustainable agriculture approach, so sustainable farming, and this means that we do not use pesticides and chemicals that can be detrimental for the environment as well as to people working in the vineyards. And therefore we have this green wine, and so this is also why we have put our bee in our label. The main characteristics of this Moscato make it such that it can be perfectly paired, certainly with desserts, so with dry cookies, for instance, but it's also great as an aperitif with, for instance, a slice of peach. So it can be a nice aperitif, and I love it personally with cheese, and therefore with yes, also fresh cheeses, but also more aged cheeses, and some like it also with more spicy food and also more piquant spicy food. And therefore, without any further ado, let's taste it. Oh yes, absolutely. Since this is a very warm room, so it's perfect to enjoy a nice glass of Moscato. Thank you, Lucia. Thank you. And then last but not least, and now I leave the floor to Tessa. She's the export manager from Vinco Vaglio Winery, and she will close with Moscato d'Asti 2020. Thank you, and good afternoon. Good afternoon to our friends in Moscow. And so we close again with our Moscato d'Asti. I am the export manager of this winery. That is a cooperative winery. I represent 192 families, 470 hectares, and we are in two villages south of Asti. One is Vinchio, and the other is Vaglio Sera. This cooperative winery was founded in 1959 with 19 founding members. Now we are many more. And 70% of our production is dedicated to Barbera. But so with the same philosophy, we have decided also to so Barbera is 70% of our production, as I was saying, and Moscato represents 5-6% of our production. This means about, well, depending on the years, 60 to 80,000 bottles of Moscato. And we have adopted the same philosophy we have adopted for Barbera, even though, of course, Moscato is a white berry grape. The idea we have is to make a wine with significant versatility. What helps us a great deal is this unique territory. Also, our area is part of the UNESCO Heritage in June 2014. So in 2014, we were given this UNESCO acknowledgement for the landscapes, for our vineyards. And we have these very special soils, sandy soils. And this helps us keep this freshness and this minerality in all the wines we make. So this is the fil rouge, so the common element in our products. And then, of course, our vineyards are very, very steep, on steep slopes. We don't use mechanical equipment, so we do everything by hand. Also, harvest is by hand. And this is a added value, we think, for the wine we make. I would like just to say something about the word Moscato, because I made a small research work, and like Lucia said, she talked about bees. And in the time of the Romans, the name Moscato came from muscus. That was the favorite wine of flies. But then it evolved. I didn't study Latin, so I have to read it. So then it was called Appianae, so the wine preferred by bees. Because during harvest, for instance, this year it didn't rain much, these grapes are very sweet and very golden yellow, and so they attract a lot of bees. And these bees are also a symbol of the healthiness, of the health of the vineyard. Even though they have beaten me quite a lot, they are nice, but sometimes I get many bee bites. One day I was going to the office and I got bitten by 3 bees all at the same time. You are not allergic, right? No, luckily I'm not. So this was just a short parenthesis, just to tell you the origin about the word Moscato. So we make this product, this wine called Vara Masca, and the legend says in the Piedmontese dialect that the Masche were witches that lived in the forests and that are very present in our area. So we have many forests in the area of Monferrato, and we have many a very good biodiversity. So every now and then we have also, by the way, quite a lot of fog in our valleys. This is another special element in our microclimate. This is Moscato d'Asti DOCG 2020. We harvest the grapes beginning of September, then we crush the grapes. And after we ferment in the autoclave the must for 2 months, and then we re-ferment at 16 degrees. And what is very important to understand is that when we have achieved 5% of alcohol, we stop fermentation with cold. And therefore, the sugars that haven't turned into alcohol are the natural sugars that remain in the wine. And therefore, we can say that Moscato d'Asti is a very natural product, so we don't add any sugar at all, and this is the very strength of this wine. And so this is a very vinous wine and very close to what you would taste if you taste a berry of Moscato. So very fresh wine with notes of orange blossom, of peaches, and we are also very lucky. We have also a lot of sage notes. And also nice acidity, a very nice acidic vein that is very good for this sweet wine. As to the pairings, well, we already said a lot. Certainly a pairing that was suggested to me yesterday. I had a tasting live with an Hungarian blogger, wine blogger, and she said that she would pair it with goulash, with fish and paprika. So she said that this would pair beautifully with goulash. And so why not? Why not, I'm saying. So actually, if you think about it, some spices with the sweetness of wine can maybe dampen, smoothen the spiciness and give a new balance between the dish and so the food and the wine. Thank you for having me and enjoy the tasting. Thank you, Tessa. Thank you very much. Also for the pairings you suggested, also for the pairings suggested by the Hungarian wine blogger. And this proves certainly that if food is good and wine is good, certainly you can always find a good pairing, a good combination. And then also, certainly, these wines, so the Spumante or sparkling Moscato, have a sugar content that is perfect for spicy food or piquant food, and so this is very good for also for what we call ethnic food, such as Thai or Indian food, that are quite spicy and quite piquant. And also in sommelier classes, they teach us that if food is spicy, sometimes a wine with some residual sugar is perfect to give a nice balance on the palate. So thank you for your contribution and for your comments. And so now, of course, we are available. If you have questions, feel free to ask. Don't hesitate to ask here in Milan or in Moscow. And of course, I would like to say something about what Tessa said. She talked about the herbaceous note, which is also a balsamic note. And generally, it's the note of sage. The note of sage that is a distinctive mark for Moscato. That is very nice and gives a very good balance. So it makes this product very well balanced and never too sweet because of these notes of sage. In the meantime, if you have no questions, in any case, I I don't know if you can see on my screen, on my left, Asti Spumante from the ATP Finals in Torino will be the official wine of the ATP tennis. And since a Russian tennis player will probably participate, we hope that they will enjoy our wine. And I mean, the last ATP final tennis player winner was Russian, and so maybe this year he will celebrate with that bottle of Asti Spumante, hopefully. Are there questions? Are there comments? Anything to ask? Any curiosity? Okay, so if there are no questions, we end here. We'd like to thank our friends in Moscow and, of course, our friends here in Milan. And we'll see you next time and the next tastings in the events that we will attend. Thank you all. And by the way, tomorrow we have another masterclass with Russia. Thank you. Thank you all.